Hello, my name is Kajri Jain. I'm an art historian at the University of Toronto, and I work on modern and contemporary Indian art and visual culture. Many thanks to the Henry Moore Institute for inviting me to give this talk in their Monuments research season. Now, the chances are that if you're watching a talk at the Henry Moore Institute, you're interested in sculpture. But how much do you know about the tallest statue in the world? Most people I ask don't even know what it is. People outside of India, that is. That's because in 2018, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated what is currently at 597 feet, the world's tallest statue, twice the height of the Statue of Liberty. Known as the Statue of Unity, it's a figure of Sardar Patel, India's first Home Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. But even as Modi inaugurated it, he had already laid the foundation stone for an even taller 696-foot statue of the Maratha King Shivaji off the coast of Mumbai. Meanwhile, a proposal to build a 725-foot bronze Ram loomed on the horizon at the contested site of Ayodhya, blessed by the saffron-clad chief minister of India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh. His name is Yogi Adityanath, also from Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP. These state-funded figures of Patel, Shivaji, and Ram, a politician, a monarch, and a deity, are only the latest and largest in a proliferating series of colossi in India's theatre of power, steadily growing in both number and height. Many such icons, both sacred and secular, materialize promises made during election campaigns to shore up support from the so-called vote banks they represent. These promises are made not just by Hindu nationalist parties, but across the political spectrum. Indeed, the Shivaji statue, a symbol of Maratha and Hindu pride, was first proposed by the Congress party in the run-up to the 2004 and 2009 national elections, and then revived by Maharashtra's BJP government in 2014. Shivaji was just one of many political icons deployed in the 2014 elections, statue wars, as they were called. The Samajwadi Party Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, UP, Akhilesh Yadav, got behind an international Buddhist organization's 200-foot Maitreya Buddha in Kushinagar. And this was a scaled-down version of an earlier proposal. Jayalalitha, the AIADMK Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, proposed a mega statue of Tamil Thai, Mother Tamil, the language. Kamal Nath, then cabinet minister in the Congress-dominated UPA government, inaugurated a 101-foot Hanuman, the monkey god, in his constituency of Chhindwara, Madhya Pradesh. Meanwhile, the BJP ran a Statue of Unity movement to involve voters in that project, organizing fundraising marathons and asking villagers to donate iron implements to melt down and use in the statue. Its 2018 inauguration unleashed a further spate of proposals for politically motivated colossi all over India. Of course, statues aren't new to the vocabulary of politics in India or elsewhere. After India's independence, public monuments and statues of Indian leaders replaced edifices that had asserted colonial rule through figures of British sovereignty and viceroys. Here it was fortuitous, at least for this purpose, that a national figure like Gandhi died a year after independence in 1948 and could soon be commemorated on main streets across the nation alongside more local heroes. But what sets India's 21st century statues apart is their ongoing role in electoral politics, despite vociferous public criticism of using precious state funds for such symbolic purposes, and also their singular pursuit of height. Indeed, one of the first colossi, initiated by a politician, was inaugurated right at the turn of the millennium on January the 1st, 2000, although its foundation stone was laid in 1979. And this was a 133-foot stone figure of the Tamil poet Tiruvalluvar at Kanyakumari, at India's southernmost tip. This was a project of the DMK's M. Karunanidhi as Tamil Nadu's chief minister. So how did this form, the mega statue form, come to take such a key position in Indian politics at this moment? One entry point into this question is a comparison with the statuomania, as it was called, of Belle Epoque Paris, exactly a century earlier, as described by Sergiusz Michalski. About 200 state-funded public monuments were raised in Paris from 1900 to 1918 amid municipal-level tussles between left and right factions, tinged by political scandals with sectarian undertones, particularly in light of the Dreyfus affair. This followed not long after the 1886 dedication of undeniably the most influential prototype for modern state colossi, the Statue of Liberty. Immediately afterwards, another French colossus, the Eiffel Tower, was constructed in Paris for the 1889 World's Fair. The Statue of Unity echoes, of course, the Statue of Liberty's name, and its early publicity constantly reiterated that it is twice the height of its famous predecessor. The Statue of Liberty, originally titled Liberty in Enlightening the World, was a gift from France to the USA and the New World as a beacon of freedom and democracy. This and other statues of the French Third Republic translated the public idioms of earlier monarchical spectacle, followed by equally spectacular revolutionary destruction, into a bourgeois democratic form. Here, as Michalski describes, grand monuments featuring allegorical symbols of the Republic complemented a host of more modestly scaled figures embodying its values, including thinkers, martyrs, scientists, and educators. Unlike earlier statues, these were animated and given political efficacy not so much by the divine power of the monarchy or the church, or indeed by the desecrations of the revolution, but by fraught public debates over statue commissions, and then the pomp and ceremony of inaugurations and annual commemorations. This efflorescence of Republican statues in France at the turn of the previous century is one instance of how spectacles of image construction, animation, and destruction, which is also a kind of animation, have posed radical challenges to the symbolic basis of political power. Other instances include the Reformation, the French Revolution, communism, and the Cold War, decolonizing movements from the Haitian Revolution to #Rhodes Must Fall, and the neoliberal war on terror, as with the toppling of statues of Saddam Hussein, or its obverse, the Taliban's destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas, followed, of course, by Al-Qaeda's attack on New York's World Trade Center. So here, statues and monuments are not so much a feature of a particular type of regime, imperial, democratic, totalitarian, etc., for they appear in all of them. Rather, they become pertinent at times when power is being reformulated by a profound change in the very nature of a regime. So then the question for monumental statues in 21st century India becomes one of identifying what kinds of upheavals in the basis and forms of power are crystallizing in these figures. Now, the most obvious forces at work in India at the turn of this century were rapid economic development after the liberalizing reforms of the 1990s and the resurgence and widespread consolidation of Hindu nationalist politics. Both play a part in the monumental statue form's emergence, as will become apparent shortly. But there's another process, just as salient, but much slower, longer term, and arguably more profound. Political assertion on the part of India's Dalit Bahujan community, known during the colonial period as untouchables, but now self-identifying as Dalit or oppressed. For what the Indian monumental statue reconfigures as a democratic public form accessible to all is not so much as in France, the monarchical spectacle or its revolutionary doppelganger, the guillotine, but the Hindu temple, guarded and mediated by Brahmin priests, a space that was previously forbidden to those seen as polluted and excluded from caste society, and therefore forbidden access to their beloved icons. Indeed, it is the movement of icons out of the temple into public space that enables its monumental size. The access to deities provided by this public visibility comes also a century after Dalit Bahujan access to deities inside the temple was fought for by the early 20th century temple entry movements. But if temple entry was a victory for Dalits, I would argue that these monumental statues represent a massive counter-appropriation of public space by a caste Hinduism reconfigured by vote bank politics and economic liberalization. This is because what we're seeing in this form, in the mix with political power, is the resurgent efficacy of icons and of religious patronage in general. This is reinforced in these statues' massive scale and the political, financial, and technological clout that this embodies for their patrons. Such religious patronage remains central to social status and mobility. But in an expanded and updated practice of modern Hinduism that adds another iconic form, that of monumental public statues, to existing objects of patronage like temple and festival deities, or even the printed images of popular calendar art where gods advertise businesses. But while this expanded idiom of public religious icons makes the gods accessible to all, it still leaves the power of temple deities and their Brahmin gatekeepers intact and doesn't fundamentally challenge the salience of caste. Just as, contra Walter Benjamin, reproductions don't threaten, but in fact enhance the value of original works of art. As with printed deities, the monumental icon form serves to extend and update hierarchical networks that deploy the power of socially mobile players based on the informal community and kin relationships that knit together politics, business, and social religious life in contemporary India. These networks could be called quasi feudal, but they're integral to the structures that undergird and enable contemporary capitalism. That is, I see them as part of capitalism's constitutive unevenness. Now, the immediate objection to this claim of the centrality of caste assertions to the emergence of monumental statues as a political form will be that not all these statues are religious. After all, the Statue of Unity is a secular figure of Sardar Patel, a human. And this is where a little art historical context is useful. Because the way to the Statue of Unity was paved in part by dozens of increasingly massive deities, appearing first as stray instances in the 1970s and 80s, and then coalescing into a full-fledged genre in the 1990s. This is not the place for all of the fascinating, multifaceted history that I trace in my book about these statues, Gods in the Time of Democracy. But let me identify some of the links between giant religious figures and politicians, particularly, but again, not exclusively from the BJP, well before Yogi Adityanath's proposed mega Ram at Ayodhya. One set of links can be traced to one of the earliest statues in this genre, the 60-foot Mangal Mahadev Shiva at the Birla Kanan Park across the highway from New Delhi's International Airport. This was inaugurated in 1994 by both the Congress Party's Karan Singh and the BJP's Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was then leader of the opposition. That statue was replicated at least a dozen times. Among its iterations is the 111-foot Sarveshwar Mahadev, completed in 2002 at Vadodara's Sursagar Lake. This was a project of Gujarat state BJP politician Yogesh Patel, who used to organize a very popular Shiva festival by this lake. Yogesh Patel introduced the statue's sculptor, Naresh Kumar Verma, to Narendra Modi. Verma had assisted his father, Mathuram, on Delhi's Mangal Mahadev Shiva and is now building the Ram statue in Ayodhya. So you see the connection across the three large statues. While the Statue of Unity's most proximate inspiration was likely the 2009 revival of the proposed Shivaji statue in Mumbai, in turn explicitly modeled on the Statue of Liberty and the Vivekanand Memorial at Kanyakumari, both also located offshore and hence maximally visible against a backdrop of sea and sky. But it's clear that the monumental statue form had already entered the BJP's political vocabulary via the 1994 Mangal Mahadev Shiva in Delhi. That Shiva statue also had another regional spin-off beyond the BJP in Gujarat. For the same sculptor, Naresh Kumar Verma was also invited to design a 135-foot statue of Guru Rinpoche, or Padmasambhava, venerated in Tibetan Buddhism, in the Himalayan state of Sikkim. This was an initiative of Pavan Chamling, Chief Minister of Sikkim for 25 years, from 1994 to 2019. His party, the Sikkim Democratic Front, actually aligned itself with the BJP in 2016. This statue, ultimately completed by another sculptor, was inaugurated in 2004 on a hilltop above Namchi, Chamling's constituency. Chamling also built the 2011 Char Dham pilgrimage cum cultural complex on a second hilltop above Namchi. This one featured a 108-foot seated Shiva. The phrase pilgrimage cum cultural speaks to the expansive frame in which these icons take on significance, one that slips, like the politicians who commission them, between religious and secular forms of legitimacy and value. Here, as with many other monumental statue sites, religion and politics and religious politics unfold under the secular umbrella of culture and the economic benefits of tourism. Similarly, yet another big statue project in Sikkim, a 95-foot seated Sakyamuni, initiated in his constituency, Ravangla, by Didi Bhutia, vice president of the SDF, was inaugurated in 2013 by the Dalai Lama as part of a Buddhist circuit pitched at international as well as domestic tourists. But again, what do these gigantic deities have to do with caste? I'm going to argue that the public statue form emerged as part of the post-independence political response to caste's inequities in two ways. For one, digging a little deeper into the history of the Mangal Mahadev Shiva, it's worth recalling the philanthropic role of its patrons, the Birlas, India's preeminent vernacular capitalist family, who reshaped public religiosity in conversation with a modern scientific outlook. They did this as patrons of multiple institutions across the country: schools, colleges, museums, mostly science museums, planetaria, and parks, as well as, above all, their spectacular, architecturally innovative, yet neo-traditionalist temples, of which at last count there were 19 across the country. The Birla Mandirs, or Birla temples as they're known, are oriented towards an expansive, inclusive Hindu public. Starting with the Lakshmi Narayan temple in Delhi, which was inaugurated by Gandhi in 1939 on condition that it should be open to all castes. A plaque at the temple describes it as a Sarvajanik Mandir, a temple for all, or a public temple. It specifies this all as Arya Dharmi Hindus. That is to say, it includes those of all religions originating on Indian soil, including Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs. But this list does not include what Gandhi called the Dalits, Harijans, whose anti-untouchability cause he had by then embraced, with G.D. Birla as his right-hand man. The term Harijan or Dalits does not appear because Gandhi's project was to firmly subsume Dalits within the Hindu fold. That was Gandhi's response to the temple entry movements in the South and to the debates on minority political representation precipitated by a British Commission on Constitutional Reforms in 1928. in which the Dalit leader B.R. Ambedkar had sought separate electorates for the so-called untouchables. This separation was unthinkable to Gandhi, who undertook a fast that led to the 1932 Pune Pact, an agreement between Ambedkar and the Brahmin Hindu Orthodox Congress leader Madan Mohan Malviya. So, in this pact, Dalits remained within a single Hindu electorate, but with reserved seats. A year later, a year after the Pune Pact, in 1933, Malviya laid the foundation stone of Delhi's Birla Mandir, a project that he had initiated with the financial support of G.D. Birla's Hindu Orthodox elder brother, Jugal Kishore. So, Delhi's Birla Mandir, with its spatial inclusion of Dalits, embodies the collaboration between Hindu orthodoxy, that is, Malviya and J.K. Birla, and reformism, Gandhi and G.D. Birla. But they're all united in their containment of caste assertion. A similar political consensus appears in the later Mangal Mahadev's inauguration at Birla Kanan by representatives of both the BJP and the Congress. It too embodies the inclusive and expansive Hindu religiosity espoused by the Birlas. As its primary patron, B.K. Birla, put it, quote, "Let the people come. They should follow their sentiments. No need to offer prasad." Prasad being the offerings that are made in temple rituals. So accordingly, no priest attends the icons or lingams in the Birla Park, though people themselves do pray and make offerings to them. This park, like the Birla temples, is a highly accessible public space, presenting a unique political opportunity in its combination of democratic publicness and inclusive yet hegemonically Hindu religiosity. An opportunity whose uptake, as I've described, contributed to the rise of the monumental statue form. But the continuing struggles of Ambedkarite and other radical anti-caste movements also resurfaced in a very different set of statues from those inspired by the Birla's Mangal Mahadev. For Ambedkar's repudiation of Hinduism as inextricable from caste hierarchy and Brahmanism did not disappear with the Pune Pact. In fact, before he died, he led many Dalits in converting to Buddhism. So another route through which public statue and monument building intensified in the political vocabulary of the 2000s was the extensive program of memorializing Dalit icons carried out between 1995 and 2012 by Dalit politician Kumari Mayawati in her stints as BSP or Bahujan Samaj Party Chief Minister of UP, Uttar Pradesh. Her tenures were hounded by constant media commentary on these monuments, their cost to the state exchequer, their expansive area, and their inclusion of statues of Mayawati herself. Adding to the frenzy was a 2009 public interest litigation against her waste of public funds. This mainstream, primarily caste Hindu antagonism played right into Mayawati's politics by keeping caste prejudice in full view in all its shades, from smooth liberal pontifications to the ugliest, most egregious casteist and sexist slurs. However, her spectacular assertions of Dalit Bahujan pride and power, combined with their media uptake, also brought this constituency's political importance home to the mainstream and put statues and monuments squarely in the public eye. This is not to say that Mayawati was solely responsible for this turn to the statue form, for she herself was amplifying a process already gathering force since Ambedkar's death in 1956, with Dalit communities in Maharashtra and North India deploying Ambedkar and Buddha images in a manner echoing both civic statuary and public forms of Hindu icons, like those carried in festival and temple processions. Ambedkar was also commemorated by the state. He drafted the Indian Constitution. So several official statues of him appeared in cities like Delhi, Bombay, and Nagpur. But as Dalit activism intensified from the 1970s onwards, these civic statues were supplemented by thousands of far humbler concrete and plaster statues of Ambedkar and the Buddha installed by Dalits themselves as a way of asserting presence, claiming space, and demanding recognition. These were seen and perhaps even intended as a provocation to caste Hindus, resulting in desecrations, smashing statues, beheading them, garlanding them, as they say, with shoes, or smearing them with mud, tar, or feces. But this violence, again, only served to reveal caste antagonism and forge unity. It also reinforced these icons' quasi-sacred efficacy. For why would anyone attack an inanimate statue unless they felt it had some kind of power? This is why iconoclasm is always, at some level, self-defeating. The metal cages around Ambedkar statues introduced in South India in around 2005 and adopted elsewhere since testify to the ongoing intensification of these processes of simultaneous recognition of and antagonism towards Dalit Bahujan assertions of equality. So, the widespread political adoption of the statue form in the 2000s was partly a response to its powerful uses in Dalit Bahujan movements, one that sought to reappropriate that power by seamlessly incorporating statues into vote bank politics. A range of parties built similar symbols for their constituencies and or tried to woo Dalit Bahujan communities by commissioning statues of their icons. These attempts were layered onto the processes I described earlier of incorporating these communities into an expanded Hindu fold by turning deities into publicly accessible attractions like the Birla Mandir or the Shiva statues at Delhi, Vadodara, and elsewhere. But even Mayawati's extravagant memorials didn't feature statues with monstrous heights. Her monument's scale unfolded through their extensive lateral spread, staking a claim to the occupation of space that had been denied Dalits for centuries. So, how did height become part of the equation? Of course, size and height have always been symbols of power, from the Colossus of Rhodes, Egyptian pyramids, Mesopotamian ziggurats or Soviet monuments, to the Burj Khalifa. They're a demonstration of control over abundant resources, particularly labor, durable materials, and space. Modernity's celebration of technology lent further value to the display of engineering capability involved in constructing tall edifices, as with the phallic towers in the world's major cities, starting with the Eiffel Tower and the Empire State Building, and then moving from Europe to North America, and then to Asia and the Middle East. China's arrival on the global economic stage was accompanied by a spate of monumental structures from the mid-1990s onwards. But within this broad pattern, each historical power formation has its own specific story. In the case of post-reform India, the scale of these statues relates to several material processes. One is the boom in concrete construction with economic liberalization and the deregulation of cement, which had been controlled by the state. This is the material that's used for most of the post-2000 statues and is what allows for their increasing heights. The earlier statues of Tiruvalluvar at Kanyakumari and another 58-foot Buddha dedicated in 1992 in Hyderabad were both made of granite. But deregulation only intensified a vernacularization of concrete that was already underway, as with these fanciful water towers in Punjab. Now, it's no coincidence here that the Birlas are one of India's earliest and biggest cement manufacturers. So, anticipating the height of the concrete Mangal Mahadev, the Delhi and Varanasi Birla Mandirs featured unusually tall towers, also enabled by cement, and again, characteristic of the Birla's fusion of religion and technology. It's also no coincidence that the Sikkim chief minister and big statue impresario Pavan Chamling once worked as a government contractor. Another post-liberalization factor is the steep rise in automobile production and ownership. Car manufacture was a key harbinger of India's economic reforms. India is now the fifth largest auto manufacturer in the world, but more to the point, the fifth largest automobile market. So this explosion of cars initiated a visual and spatial regime where the inter and peri-urban spaces opened up by new highways became available for drive-by spectacles, including, of course, monumental statues and temple complexes. Such roadside images or monuments need to be large enough to be seen from speeding vehicles in a new regime of leisure. This echoes the way the billboards and hotel facades of Las Vegas appeared in a rapidly automobilizing mid-20th century USA, along with quirky roadside attractions like the Long Island Duck or Paul Bunyan and his Blue Ox Babe. But in India, they took on a religious idiom that echoes far more ancient roadside shrines. There's also a political aspect to the post-liberalization economy that explains why so many of these statue projects, including Modi's Statue of Unity, have been initiated by the chief ministers of states. The structural adjustment policies imposed by the IMF and the World Bank as part of India's neoliberal reform process included a push to fiscal decentralization, which frames subnational federal units like India's states as economic players competing to attract investment in their own right. This has fostered a culture of regional boosterism as states and their chief ministers vie to put themselves on the economic map through development projects couched in the globalized idioms of infrastructure and tourism. These also cater in a populist vein to the local pride of their specific constituencies by claiming record breaking achievements. So here, height functions as an easy numerical comparator. Some of these state level projects have a specifically regional appeal, such as Karunanidhi's Tiruvalluvar and the enormous figures of the Lingayat saint Basava in Karnataka. The latest ones, however, Modi's Statue of Unity, the Mumbai Shivaji, and the Ayodhya Ram, all assert relevance at both a regional or local and a national scale. The Statue of Unity actually jumped scale, along with its primary patron, from a state level project to a national one with central funding. Sardar Patel was known as the Loh Purush or Iron Man after Bismarck, the unifier of Germany. Because he unified India's princely states, princely kingdoms within the nation. So Patel was the perfect Gujarati come national figure to be appropriated by the BJP as a suitably muscular foil to Gandhi, who was the other far more famous son of Gujarat. Here, Patel was made over as a local demonstration of global capability within a political and economic order quite different from anything that either he or Gandhi would have imagined. The Statue of Unity became an early element in Modi's ongoing leveraging of the regional support of Gujaratis, including those in the diaspora, such as Jersey City, also known as Little Gujarat, coincidentally right under the Statue of Liberty's nose. Modi favored Gujarat as the location for spectacular development projects, including the Statue of Unity, a high-speed railway, and the world's largest cricket stadium, all part of a portfolio showcased to visiting dignitaries like Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. But even as the dominant media narrative settled into an ecstatic one of flourishing tourism, again in the language of numbers and world records, the Statue of Unity has also been subject to a stream of criticism. During the construction process, it was pilloried for its Chinese manufactured bronze plates that contradicted Modi's campaign to make in India, and also for his government's directive to public sector oil, gas, and mining firms to funnel their corporate social responsibility funds to the statue. At the 2018 inauguration, despite preemptive state detentions, thousands protested against the statue's ongoing displacement of the area's Adivasi or indigenous people, of whom at least 25,000 had already been relocated from the site of the Sardar Sarovar Dam, the hugely controversial mega project, also named after Patel, that the statue overlooks. And the COVID-19 pandemic is just one of many occasions on which the most pervasive criticism of the statue resurfaced, one that's common to all such projects, its use of public resources for a statue rather than to directly help those in need. This polarization of opinion is, of course, reminiscent of the discourse around Mayawati's monuments. But here, the power equation is reversed. In this case, it points to the contemporary media environment's domination by echo chambers or filter bubbles of self reinforcing address to specific audiences, helped along by the BJP's organized armies of social media trolls. If the public sphere in the era of statuomania in Paris a century ago saw itself as one where opposing views confront each other face to face, perhaps that too was its own kind of exclusive bourgeois bubble where broadly similar people followed certain ground rules of civility when agreeing to disagree. But such bubbles have multiplied and solidified in the broadened arena of contemporary populism, configured around identity based vote banks, as publicity is channeled into competing silos of pre existing ideological frames to become further evidence in support of or against a populist leader. In this sense, it's the very monstrosity of the giant statues that makes them efficacious. Through their claim to public attention, no matter whether for better or for worse, since criticism, like iconoclasm, only serves to reinforce their power. And yet, criticism still has its place. For to the extent that it embodies thought rather than knee jerk reaction, it's needed more than ever. For it keeps alive the volatility of signification that's inherent to any image, but which authoritarian populism works hard to tie down in its attempt to constitute and contain the people. This binding of the people into one, this attempt to fix the image and affix it to a specific idea of the people, in this case, Indians as caste Hindus, sees tightly bound numbers as a source of strength, like the fascio or bundle at the root of the term fascism. Try as it might, though, in its very attempts to belittle liberty, unity cannot help but recall and revive it. Thank you.